We often admire people's successes, but never take the time to explore their challenges. Talk to Lady brings out the inside stories of the peaks and valleys of our daily struggles. A weekly show that features people and stories from all walks of life.
I probably don't look like I chopped cotton or picked cotton, but I did. And now, this is a $500,000 probably home, up to $500,000 home.
You'll hear success stories from rags to riches that will inspire you to aspire to be great. Be the first to know, but only on Big A TV.
Well, hello viewers. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Senghor, and we are coming live on Beggy TV. This is the GAM Recap Show, a show that will be airing every Saturday at 5 p.m. GMT, that is Gambian time, and also will be airing at the same time at 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you're in the Central Time Zone, it will be at 12 p.m. If you're in the Pacific Time Zone, it will be at 10 a.m. So this show, is a new initiative that my co-host and I, who is Sheriff, I'll let him come in and introduce himself in a minute. We are doing this to have a recap on Gambian events, mostly the high news events that have transpired throughout the week, and we will just delve into some of those issues and come up with objective analysis. And we'll also be doing it in local languages as well, mostly Mandinka and Wolof, so that for the benefit of those that are not conversant with the English language, we want to widen our audience and make sure that everyone out there, is able to understand and take something away from this show. So without going forward, I'll let Sheriff to come in and also introduce himself, to your viewers.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Good afternoon to the viewers within the US, Central Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time, and good afternoon to the viewers in the Gambia, and good morning to the viewers on the western seaboard of the United States. Welcome, the GAM Recap Show, and I want to say thank you very much to my host, for that warm introduction.
Thank you, Sheriff. And the way we'll start this, we understand that a lot of news items, happened, throughout the week. But the major item that we would like to delve into today has to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic as it relates to Gambia, and also what the government response plan has been. But, before talking about an issue, I think it is also important, to go back a little bit on memory lane and kind of talk about, what happened, go through a sequence of events, right? So, Mr. Sheriff, if you don't mind, I would like you to take us down through that path and just tell us, what happened and also how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, gas, 19. It's a global pandemic that has affected, virtually every country including the Gambia, over the past 6 months. And the effects are still being felt, globally, but more so, in the Gambia, there have been a lot of efforts, on the part of the government, on the part of, civil society and private citizens of the country to address, the crisis, we have at hand. What the pandemic has done to a lot of countries, including our own, is, to expose, some of the gaps, when it comes to healthcare, education, agriculture, and just, society as a whole, the attitude of the people, how it affects our response, to natural disasters, be it the COVID-19, or other natural disasters, that affects my country. The response of the country, or the government, I should say, has received, a lot of criticism from citizens due to the measures, that have been taken. And I think, it's a fair point for us, to address, some of those, as we go along, because we are at a critical stage right now, and we have to look at the future impact with 19 as well.
Yes. So, but let me take you back a little bit. When the SOP, which was the state of emergency, when it was declared by the National Assembly, first I think it was for a 45-day period. So everyone in Gambia was excited, right? Not excited in a way, but everyone was willing to lend a hand. The diaspora was very active. A lot of organizations were out there, contributing, giving out food items, to poor families, putting water stations, and soap stations everywhere to make sure that everyone, is well informed and also participating. But something happened, the lukewarmness of the people started, sinking in. And a lot of people, for some reason, when the National Assembly decided that, they're not going to extend the state of emergency, and a lot of speculation started arising, people not even thinking this pandemic is real, it's not affecting Gambians, or it's not in existence in Gambia. And what do you have to say about that, during that time frame, what transpired in the people's, rationale in their thinking patterns?
Yeah, that is true. Initially, when the pandemic hit and neighboring Senegal started, reporting cases, and Gambia got its first case, from a Bangladeshi who allegedly died, from a COVID-19 related illness. And I think that was another fatality that we had, 2 at the time. And what that did was, it sent alarm bells ringing that, the country, most of the government need to take action by creating some sort of a lockdown to restrict movement of the people, by putting some limitation to economic activity and social gatherings. And the whole Gambian population within the country and in the diaspora were so incentivized, to support, the efforts of the government. And one of the reasons for that is we come together as a community to help. And this is not restricted to Gambia itself, but globally we've seen private citizens and businesses, coming together to support, the effort of the government, various governments, in the world to respond to COVID-19. And Gambia was, Gambians and the Gambia government, was part of, the pool of efforts, to address, this pandemic. So the public, health regulation and emergency powers the president had was invoked, to restrict, the movement of people. Initially, I've seen a lot of efforts, online, Gambians raising funds, to support their people in the Gambia. As we all know, most Gambians, survive based on the remittances, that are sent, from overseas. But beyond supporting individual families, I think Gambians at large put a lot of money, to help give out rice and other feeding, to the poor people in the country. We have to look in the US and other Western countries where the governments, have a lot of money, they have, bigger economies, they have a better social safety net. We don't have that in the Gambia. The Gambian government does not have, the social protection schemes to give cash outs or to give food, to the local people, in state of emergencies. So
Right.
the regular Gambian knows that, especially those abroad. But impressively, the Gambians within the country itself, the poor people took out, their $10 is $100 is. I think there were certain political leaders, that joined the fray, and there were other government officials and social influencers, that joined that effort. And it was very impressive to see regular Gambians come out in mass, to give, whatever meager resources, they had to support their fellow Gambians. That was a
Right.
start. But then, as you said, eventually we let our guards down. Well, nobody expected, this COVID-19 would be a problem within the United States, within other countries such as the UK and other parts of Africa. People started letting their guards down for various reasons. If you look at the Gambia, as I said, there were criticisms levied against the government, based on the effectiveness of their response. Eventually, we began to see some cracks in what the government was doing, and given our poor borders, people started crossing between Senegal and Gambia illegally.
So let me cut you right there, Sheriff. I'm sorry, but do you see any correlation between the cracks within the government machinery in terms of their response strategy, as well as the people's response, as well the people letting their guards down?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think the blame and the responsibility is solely the government's. Society also has a part to play. We have to look at our religious practices. Many people will be like, Gambia is a blessed country. I'm a Muslim. That fatalistic, behavior, that, we are protected mass, we are blessed by God. As a result, we will not be inflicted, with this kind of disease. That is a big, even though you had some imams, that will come out, to ask people, to stay at home, to wash their hands, and to practice, the social distance, guidelines. Yet still, you have some people who do not believe that COVID-19, actually exists, and that is a problem. With the religious, beliefs some people had, and just the traditions and the attitudes of people within society. There are people who are holding weddings, naming ceremonies, you name it, gathering, and another thing too we have to notice, Gambia is a very young population. It's a very young population. It's one of the most youthful populations, in Africa. And COVID-19 as a disease affects more than the youthful people. And that has helped us quite a bit when it comes, to the rate of infection, and people succumbing, to the illness as a whole. It doesn't affect young people as much as, it affects, older people. Young people can carry the disease and they are still asymptomatic. Whilst older people with underlying health issues, when they have this disease, what happens is most of the time they will fall ill, and some of them don't make it. So I think that played, very well to Gambia's advantage. But then when we let our guards down, they started, interacting freely, throwing caution to the wind. Then eventually we started, spreading this disease vector, and then the older people started getting it. And as we are seeing now, I think the last report I saw, we had about 16 deaths. Whether it is true or not, I'm not sure. That's the report I see, and most of them are the elderly. So I think these are things that are contributing. Yes.
Okay, that brings me back to the National Assembly, right? After they decided, they voted against extending the state of emergency. So the government was doing its part in trying to ensure that, there's still a public emergency, even though the enforcement factor, is another piece of itself that needs to be talked about. But now, we saw the president embark on a series of presidential declarations, which were all 7 days. That was to the extent of his powers, right? So after that, he did a series of those. Then for some reason that, I don't know if he got overwhelmed by doing the same thing every week, then we saw a shift in power from the presidency to the Ministry of Health, giving them powers to declare not a state of emergency, but something related to that. So what did you see? And also after that, that was just for about a week or so, and some interesting events happened. That's after the Tabaski, we started seeing, the incubation period of people moving around too much. Then we started seeing some deaths in our communities, mostly high-ranking officials, and also ministers and of course the vice president, everyone started testing positive for COVID. So what can you tell us about the president shifting powers from the presidency when they should be leading, but now transferring those powers to the Ministry of Health and also now leading from behind?
Well, in the operation of government, I think it's not only the office of the presidency that matters. The government is composed of various departments and parastatals, and the Minister of Health, I believe.
You're cutting out a little bit, Sheriff.
Can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you now, but you were cutting out.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes, you may want to get a little close to your computer or your cell phone.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes, it's way more better. Yes, way better now, yes.
So what I was saying is, the government is composed of various ministries and parastatals, and the president deferring to the expertise of the Ministry of Health. I don't think it only means that the president is overwhelmed. It's probably because the Minister of Health have the right personnel, the right public health officials or epidemiologists who understand public health issues better than him. And of course they also have a little bit more credibility than him, and they might be a little bit more removed from politics. So for them to have that responsibility, I think that might be his thinking. I can't think for him, but even within the U.S., you would see the government has a task force, which is a COVID-19 task force that is led by Fauci. And whenever the president holds a press conference, he has those people by him because it lends credibility to his press conferences and to make the people understand that driving certain decisions he makes, have the right expertise and the credibility, to influence, public behavior. So, it's plausible that this was, the thinking of, the president in the Gambia, and I hope he continues doing this way.
Sheriff, it seems like we're having network issues. Something might be wrong with your mic because we could hardly hear you sometimes, and sometimes you are very clear.
Yeah, there's latency here, but I'm speaking loudly, so.
Okay.
I don't know. We might be
All right.
latency. I'm not sure. I'm speaking loud.
Okay, can you tell me then, from a political standpoint, I'm looking at it. I understand, what you alluded to the health ministry being professionals in the area and they have authority in what they're talking about. But from a leadership standpoint, the people are looking towards the leadership to gain confidence and also allay the fears that this disease does not exist in our country. So I think the presidency, in some way, the onus is on them to come out and talk to the people and ensure the people, just to make sure that people are safe, people believe in the leadership. But if that leadership aspect is shifted to another ministry, then the people, I think that's a contributing factor towards this element of suspicion where everyone is claiming that the disease is not in existence in the country.
So, well, see, Ibrahim, leadership is very difficult. And I think the role of the president is not, the president has to be attentive to the concerns of the people. But as a leader, you can't please everybody. And some actions you make will be questioned. Some actions you make and some decisions that you make would please others. But I think your ultimate role and goal as a political leader, more so a president, is to do things that serves the best interests of the country as a whole and every citizen within your country. So if deferring to the expertise of the Ministry of Health is what would do that, I believe that's what you should do.
Okay, I agree with you on that. So, but let's move forward to a little bit. We're still talking about the sequence of events, and if you're just joining us, this is the GAM Recap Show live on Beggar TV. This is a new show that will be here every Saturday at 5 p.m. Gambian time. Also, we will be speaking the local languages, preferably in Mandinka and Wolof, and maybe Sheriff can inject a little bit of Fula in there too. And I understand he's proficient in that. So, but Sheriff, let's go back to last week. I believe it was Monday. Right after we came out of the Tabaski time frame, important personalities. We got press releases that the VP was positive. Mamburenjai and other ministers were also positive, and the president was going into self-quarantine, or they call it self-isolation, for a little bit. And we also saw Rahim Malik Low, who happens to be the mayor of Banjul, come out in a dramatic fashion, because someone connected or someone very close to her, passed away due to COVID. So I think this raised a lot of alarm bells, in the country, and people also started paying attention. So that notion of this disease does not exist in the Gambia, did a 180, because now people are saying, okay, they are seeing people that they know and love, contracting the disease and also probably, passing away from it. So, but before we go forward a little bit, I'll just play a little snippet of the Rahim Malik Law video. Maybe we can listen to it, and then you can give us your opinion on that.
Assalamu alaikum wa Gambia. Assalamu alaikum wa Banjul. Man la Rahim Malik Law. Manual people were started here. Again, small time with them. I will direct it. One could direct to the Minister of Health. My dear brother, Honorable Mangla Nyan Giliala, since all powers are given to you, President begin the powers yip mo ekatika jahnako. Mangla Nyan, the greater Banjul area, at least give us a lockdown of 1 week. It's very, very important. Could you get this coronavirus bill? You attack you boy the greater Banjul area at North Bank. My brother, Mangla Nyan, we have consensus. Man, as a politician, I have concerns. I cannot sit down saying my people need every day. Look at the hospital. I've been to the sanitarium. So the hospital, Binakalamel. Sasamate, I'm talking to you as a sister.
All right, so Sheriff, I'm sure you were able to hear some of the things that she was saying. So I'll try to just say this in a little bit in Wolof, and maybe you can also say it in Mandinka. So moom lu mu doon wax rek mooy dafa am nit ñoo xam ne maybe dañ ko jegeñ daal, dañ close to moom, ñoom ñu ngi dee, but as the mayor of Banjul mu ngi doon ñaan dimbal from the Ministry of Health, because ñoom ñoo am doole bi pour ñu mun a put lockdown in Banjul. So loolu la doon ñaan, but since bu mu ñaanee loolu noonu video bi dem na around si dëkk bi, and ñu bari gis nañ ko ba pare. After loolu noonu gis nañ government bi ñëw def a turnaround, and after that ñu door di impose curfew si dëkk bi. So Sirif fu moole man dëkk kan mooy laal Rahim Malik Law la ñing video ay mu impact le soto fenkodo na man sakunda la direction on it.
Yeah, abarka baka Ibrahima mbadin la moyer laal ani mbadin jiber laal komi Ibrahima ya fanya men suru account any video play non tenga mame wanjula lord mayor di ka fo mi Rahim Malik Law abe kumolum banke kan video ni to wolon ka itandi Minister of Health mu yalan ka bata le Minister de mumbe Marling jata kende abundala abadani kan komi ni albada mbe banko ka fo mi COVID-19 abe tinyaro ne mantoro mon ke kan banko kan sakantuma Banjul alfa jama bal bije mun yalan ka fa kura ni ayemu da dol bije imam balu yo abe daniro ke kan komi Minister ni ana ala dinkira bunda mol ibe sina nan pour ka finti ke kato ko ke ka di problem be ke ran banko kan ka de marota ka fay Banjul ko kan ani banko be pour ka je in kura ni akana man korota kata kasi ande mol kan yo abolo ko kan sura counter ten nyimu kulti astafurla angale counter nyimu kulti mu yalan kafo amu jahal kulti ado mol ngajele lord mayor of Banjul e kafo mu yero himalik lo afintita kala wasi bundata kata kaitandi mansa kundala ane modo marling jararo ministry la karon baka Ibrahim.
Baraka Sheriff, thank you for that. But then, right after Rahim Malik Law did that, to me, I don't want to go too much personal on that, but I think it was a good political move that she did that, and also brought about awareness to what was happening, especially in Banjul. Though the numbers were not dramatic as she alluded to, but now after that we also saw politicians also responding. We saw the Secretary General of what's the name, Citizens Alliance, making statements. We saw Mai Fadi making statements. We also saw Lawyer Dabo made a similar statement, on his Twitter account. And on his Twitter account, he said, I urge all supporters to stay home and follow WHO guidelines. There will be more opportunities to work for the party in the future. Yes, we want to win elections, but we can only win when we are alive and well. Our nation's health supersedes any electoral victory come 2021. So that was a change of trajectory, because even though this COVID-19 was happening, a lot of politicians were on the ground, campaigning, doing house-to-house campaigns. So I thought that was a big shift in strategy for the UDP, in addressing their supporters, also telling them to stay home. So I think from my perspective, though he received a little backlash because some people were saying that instead of addressing the country, he chose to address his supporters. But, in my own opinion, I think his supporters are part of the country, and whoever else, sees that message, should also comply, whether you support his party or not. So can you just tell us a little bit about, the political response, from our political leaders?
Well, the political, we have a great job, to our political leaders, who came out to talk to their supporters, to stay, at home, and then to cease, political campaigns or whatever political activities, Can you hear me, Ibrahim?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I think that's a plausible act, for the political leaders, to come out to appeal to their supporters, to stay and cease, from all political activities. This is not the time for that. There's a national crisis at hand, and as we know, COVID-19 is transferred, based on personal interactions, and when you have, political campaigns, you are meeting people, you are touching people, speaking to people, and it's a great way to spread the disease. So it's a good move that the political leaders came out to talk, to their people. And well, the backlash would always be there. We have a democracy. Prior to 2016, I mean, people did not have the liberty to come out and voice their opinions. Now we are in a flexibility post, the 22 dictatorship that we have. So if I were my party or I were Senator Dabo, I would be very happy, to see that kind of criticism, because it shows that, people can express their dissent and express, their own opinions, but I don't think that should change their action. As I said, political leadership is about influence, and you talk to the people that you can influence. If it is your party supporters that you would influence, talk to them. Maybe those people, that you are going to influence, to stay home, might be the ones, to make a difference. And I think, say for instance, if my party or Lawyer Dabo talk to, the entire country, you will still have people who will come out and say that, they're trying to take the role of the president. You'll have those set of people who will say that too. They're trying to take the role of, the president, Adam Barrow, by talking to the whole entire country. So yes. In political leadership, when you decide, you divide. But if you're going to divide, make sure your division is going to be based on the public good. And I think they did great.
Yeah, so I like that point that you touched on, saying that some people will accuse those political leaders of trying to take the position of the presidency. But in our case, the Gambia, Sheriff, when you look at how things happen after the plea from the mayors of Banjul, we also saw the presidency taking those powers again, impliedly, though it was not written, but we started seeing press releases coming from the presidency invoking a curfew, that will start from 10 p to 5 a. So to my own belief, I think that the target for is the nightclub goers or these night owls that will be out there from 10 p to 5 a partying that do not believe in the existence of COVID in the country. So, but then, we've seen the police being proactive, dealing with the citizens, outside in the streets, managing traffic and, enforcing the curfew, which is a good thing. It might help with the disease, but I think 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., it's not the time. Is that the only time that Gambians are out in the streets, being together, or should the curfew time be extended, maybe allowed to start at an earlier time, maybe 8 p.m. or maybe 7 p.m.? I understand with transport restrictions in Gambia, when you get off work at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, sometimes it's difficult to get home on time. So maybe if the curfew time, is started at maybe 8 p.m., that could help out a little bit. And also another thing that, that people are speculating on Facebook, I don't know the validity of this, but a lot of people are insinuating that the president himself, his health status is unknown as it is, though the presidency came out, and said that he was COVID-19 negative after he tested, but he was supposed to give out a speech a few days ago, which, translated into a press release from the presidency. That's the invoking of the curfew. So can you just lament a little bit on that? And the president is nowhere to be found. There is no leadership from the presidency. So just tell us a little bit about how this curfew is important, if the time of the curfew is necessary, or should it be extended a little bit, to help save lives?
With regards, to the curfew, I think 10 p.m. Most likely. See, I believe, the limitation of economic activity by restricting, people moving around has potential to damage the economy to a very, 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 very large extent. And the government has to be very careful the way they impose the curfew or how much, they restrict, economic activity within the country. So probably that's, along the lines that they're thinking, that, the businesses, by 10 p.m. should, all totally be closed. And you made a point, about, the young people, who are partying. As I mentioned earlier, COVID-19 tend to impact, the younger population, a whole lot less, than the older population. So as a result, they feel some sense of immunity, to the disease. And that also adds, to, they have full sense of security that they can go out and party. So maybe the 10 p.m. curfew, it's also targeted against another group of people, like you alluded, earlier. But if you're from the rural areas, I don't know for now, but back in the day, 10 p.m., you'll be in bed, especially in the rainy season, because you have to wake up early in the morning to go and farm. So most likely that the problem is, with the urban youth. So I guess that's what it is, but I'm sure lower down, Kalaji all the way to Quaina, most youths, would be in bed by 8 p.m. anyway. So this might be more targeted, towards, the rural, urban youth, who have, that kind of, social nightlife and feeling secure based on the fact that, therefore, within the population, that is less impacted, by COVID-19. But going back to the president is in self-isolation, as he said. He's under self-quarantine. So, I mean, I don't know whether he's positive. I don't know whether he's negative. That's, his own health issue. Is it okay for him to come and talk to the people? I think I did see a report that said, well, he's negative. We just have to take, that news report, at face value. But since the press release is out, I think that's enough. He's in self-isolation, he's in self-quarantine for the next 14 days. I think we just have to, take it at that.
Okay. So, let's switch gears a little bit. I want us to go and start talking about a little bit about the impact of this COVID-19, since we dealt on the sequence of events. What impact does it have on the Gambian economy from the household all the way to at the national level? Can you just give us a little bit? Because we also understand that the markets are now, operating from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Banks also, have restrictions on their times, and they're also closed on Saturdays. They used to be open. So a lot of business activities that are deemed non-essential are also being closed. For an economy as ours, I think what our government is doing is basically trying to mimic, the lockdown features, from the Western countries. So do you think this lockdown of non-essentials, as they deem it, is it a good fit for an economy of like ours? And what impact do you think it would have on the Gambian economy going forward right now? Both the short term and the mid term, and you can also say a long term impact as well.
Well, I think the impact is already been felt. We are a very high contact, society. You cannot, ask the Gambian, to sit at one place, for a very long time, because as we all know in our society, we are all in and out of, each other's, compounds, instead of weddings, funerals, whatsoever. So psychologically, this is something very hard, for Gambians, to really process. And the same thing applies, to a lot of other countries, around the world. But as we all know, one of the best ways, COVID-19, social gatherings and people contact. So the lockdown, minimizes the people going out and spreading the disease. So that is just not only a Western response. I think anywhere else is the logical, thing to do. Economic standpoint, the COVID-19 has a lot of potential to do damage and to reverse the sustainable development achievements of countries like the Gambia that already have a fragile economy. We have very fragile institutions, health-wise, agriculture, education. So the impact would be widely felt. In the short term, as we see, schools are closed, and we have never had a disaster preparedness, to respond effectively, to such a pandemic. There are kids, in the Gambia that should have been taking their grade 9 exams. There are kids in the Gambia that should have been taking their grade 12 exams right now, and they just can't. Even though I've seen, some news reports, within that no emergency declaration of the president that, grade 12 will be taking their exams sometime next month, I believe it is. But are they prepared well in those exams, after having missed, school for so long? How much does it impact, their results, and how much would that impact, their potential, to enter university? If they fail, they can't go to college, or they can't go to good colleges, and how much would that impact, their future? Because if you can go to good schools, to get the right skill sets, to be competitive in the global workforce, that affects, the country, because the return on investment in education is severely impacted as well. So both in the short term and the long term, you have to look at things, this way. Now we have the health sector that is, heavily overwhelmed, by this COVID-19, and most of the resources, that should have been spent, in other areas are now diverted, to, our COVID-19 response, and that's going to be a big problem long run. What about malaria? How much are we going to be investing in malaria? Which is also a big problem, especially in the rainy season. The focus now is on COVID-19. The doctors are like all stretched, too thin in responding to COVID-19. And they just don't have the time, or they don't have the right personnel or the resources, to respond, to malaria patients. Babies, that are going to die. Adults, that are going to be severely impaired, health resources are diverted from other areas to COVID-19. That's a problem. We are a tourist-based economy. Now, with this global pandemic, the tourist sector is severely impacted. Tourists are not coming to Gambia. What about the people working, within the tourist, industry? How much, is the government going to lose when it comes, to tourism dollars? So tourism is an export, and we're going to be losing those tourist receipts. And that is also going to affect, how much money and capacity the government has to reinvest in other development projects. How are we going to pay our debt? These are all things that could affect, the country in the long run. But I think what it has done more is to expose the weakness of the Gambian government in its, disaster preparedness. It has also exposed the response of, the government, to any natural disaster that might happen, in the Gambia. And it's also an opportunity. We have to sit back and reflect on things that we've done right and the things that, we've done wrong. If certain laws need to be changed, they need to be changed. If certain policies need to be changed, they need to be changed. Where do we have to develop capacity? These are all areas, we have to, focus on. But most importantly, the biggest shame of all is the corruption, the alleged corruption that has been exposed, due to this COVID-19. I saw Mr. Samate came on.
Hold it right there. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, all right.
No, I just wanted you to hold it right there.
Go on. Probably that might be unexpected.
Yes, I will come back to that, and, I have some things that, some graphics that I would like to show. But for now, we are being joined by Musa Cisse, who is a Gambian and residing in Paris, France. So Musa, can you hear us?
Yeah, obviously. Thank you. So,
Thank you for joining us, Musa, and I'm really glad to have you here. If you've been listening to our conversation, Sheriff just touched on a very important point, and that's the impact of this COVID-19 pandemic on the Gambian economy, as it relates to tourism. You understand that our economy is heavily dependent on tourism, the tourism dollars that come into our country. And also another factor that it's going to impact a whole lot is the remittances that come from citizens, Gambian citizens abroad in the diaspora, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of us in the diaspora, are also impacted, in terms of jobs. Maybe if you're not laid off from your job, you might, your work hours might be shortened. So it impacts your take-home pay. So, and if that impacts your take-home pay, you have to take care of your house first, your household, before you start sending money back home, which, of those people that are heavily dependent on your remittances, how is this going to impact, the people back home in terms of you can first delve onto the tourism aspect and then go into the remittances as it relates to our economy.
All right. Thanks to you. And I'm saying hi and greetings to the panelists. And the audience too, I'm saying my sincere greetings to them. First of all, concerning about anything what concerns about this pandemic that is going on around in the world, I think we must come back or roll back to the drawing board of this virus that is circulating actually. We need to realize that and consider, first of all, to know that this virus, the reason why it's called or named, they qualify it, I can say scientifically around the world as a global pandemic. I think we must come back, first of all, to those fundamental ethos to understand why. So mbadin kamoila wolo nyenti ni ajembe nying kachakela kachanyem kumaya tabake proka yitandi jamani lamoila mumela be wati l'economie ya lonko awato be sangar limbake ning WHO World Health Organization tata fo ye announce ke dunia kono komun sasa wala jankaro le be kiri me ya lonko a jankaro nying a sembo waratale to a point iko dunia be fenkolon sasale be kere me yalon ko ay dunia be le murumuru so wo sasa nyim fenno me yalon ko amanke banku kilin na sasati. So I will come back to this. this virus or this pandemic is not. Oh, who is calling again? All right, sorry, someone is interrupting me. Hello, I don't know whether you're getting me.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
All right, I have an interruption. Someone called me. Okay, so what I'm trying to say, I think we need to come to the drawing board concerning about this virus. It's a global pandemic, not a Gambian pandemic. It started somewhere in Wuhan in China. I think we need to come back to the drawing board from that point, from that angle, to realize that how prepared, in fact, this is the point. We need to realize where the blame game need to be where the blame game should be, and where it is not to be. Okay. Sometimes back in December, I can say between November to December, this virus, the issue of this virus started looming. That there is a virus in China which is highly contagious, and it's circulating around in there. And what the failures, I think, the first failures of the global responsibility failures which occurred is, I think WHO at that time should confine the entire nation of China. The entirety of China should have been enclosed. No internal, no external contact with China in terms of human movement or transport or whatever sort. So this was to be the first measure to contain China itself, to make sure that China is completely isolated from the world. Hence, that wasn't done. The virus made its way because it doesn't go by itself. People transport it all. People transport this virus. People goes with it. People go with the virus from one place to another. So
yes,
it's coming back to our country.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming because this I can say. Let me just tell you, it's a whole trajectory coming to our country, and whereby you will realize that our country, the Gambia, the unpreparedness of our leaders. You will come to realize that. Okay, now when this happened, the West was first Italy. It was very serious in Italy, and then we had in Spain, in France, and in many other European countries. By then, Africa was, somehow I can say a bit more. What are you trying to say?
No, I was saying that we kind of get the historical aspect of the COVID-19 disease. How it traveled around the world and also got to the Gambia. So now that the disease, we all agree, is in the Gambia, is here. So what impact do you think it has on our economy as it relates to tourism? Being locked, all these countries, having some sort of a lockdown and travel restrictions imposed in a lot of countries. So our economy being heavily dependent on tourism, like a lot of our youth, look at the hotels, the travel industry, also the craft markets. And it's a lot of stakeholders that are impacted when it comes to tourism, right? So how, can you tell us, how that impacts the Gambian economy, and also in terms of the job market, I would say, and also remittances as a second factor. Maybe Sheriff can go into the tourism aspect of it, and then Musa, you can come back and talk about the remittances, the impact of that, on our economy.
Ismail, even beyond the tourism, I think I touched a little bit on tourism, but internally as well, we have to also look at, our food security aspect and how COVID-19 affects, food security, in the Gambia. Most of, the food that we consume in the Gambia is imported, especially the rice. We do not have the capacity to be food self-sufficient. Most of our rice, comes from Asia. And Asia is, where this thing started. And like most other countries, around the world, that is going through this pandemic, they're also having their own lockdown. And how does that affect our food security? We have to look at that. Because, international commerce, has been severely affected, and production of food around the world has been severely affected. And as a result, there could be a hike in prices. And now we have a country that is poor. The means of the earnings and the means of living of people in the Gambia are very low. And if you do a lockdown where economic activity is severely curtailed, what it does is, it also reduces, the earning powers of the people. And that can also increase hunger and poverty within the country. What about the vegetable garden growers, around the country? What about the farmers around the country who cannot sell their produce because, the market, activities are severely restricted. The times are shortened. Therefore, can perish. Because most of the food that is grown, vegetables, are perishable goods.
Yes.
Go to waste. And then affects, their earnings. So we have to look at, it's very multidimensional. There is no way you can cover all the impacts of COVID-19. It's latent, and these are the ones, that are manifest, that we can talk about. But tourism is key, and as a country, tourism is like our number one export earnings. And secondly, we have agriculture, and as we said, most of our farmers, in the Gambia, besides the rainy season, most farmers are horticultural farmers. And I think over the past few months, most of those vegetable gardeners, etc., have been severely affected, by this pandemic and the lockdown that limited their economic activities. But I think pretty much that's some of the things that internally we have to look at, and also externally, and our relationship with our neighbors. Senegal has been on a lockdown for a very long time, and we know Gambia has a vibrant re-export economy, where the port of Banjul will receive goods and export them to other ECOWAS countries. So with this lockdown, the re-export economy is also severely impacted, and that also means that the Gambia doesn't earn revenues. So we just, as Mr. Cisse said, the preparedness, it's a problem, but our recovery should be the focus right now, and it opens doors for us to go back to the drawing board to see what's been done right and what's been done wrong, and what can be done to make our country more prepared and resilient in the face of future natural disasters.
Okay, thank you for that, Sheriff. I want to show you guys, before we go into the lessons learned and the recovery strategy, I want to show you guys a quick spreadsheet here, real quick. So back in May, this is the spending as in May, right? So it was a lot of money that was committed by the Ministry of Finance, about $500 million, and then $160 million was appropriated, by the Ministry of Finance to the Ministry of Health. And then this was as of May 31st, how they spent that money. Afterwards, we haven't gotten any figures yet. But when you look at this spreadsheet, what stood out to me is the medical and hospital equipment. They only spent $352,000 on that. And when you look at the footnote that they provided, it indicates that that was spent on ventilators. So I'm thinking that during that time frame, they were not thinking that there would be a spike in the number of COVID cases. But look at the hotel accommodation. They spent $14 million on that. And I think I want us to kind of talk about that. That's a whole lot of money that is being spent on hotel accommodations when people are traveling into the country with the understanding that, okay, there's a lockdown in this country, and once I arrive into the country, I'll be quarantined for about 14 days. So, and there's this debate going on that, people should be responsible for paying the cost of their own quarantine, because that you'll be quarantined, but you keep coming in order to enjoy that hotel accommodations, food, free food, and everything from the government. So, Mr. Cisse, can you just tell us a little bit about how the spending, is being impacted? Because right now, the 14 million was as of May 31st, and now we're in August. The number probably tripled as the cases are rising, or maybe quadrupled. So, can you tell us a little bit about that, Mr. Cisse?
All right, I didn't get the final question from you, but because I have a message that was coming in.
No, I was talking about the quarantine, people coming in from the diaspora to Gambia, knowing fully well that they will be quarantined for 14 days. So that expense on the government in terms of paying for hotel accommodations, food, and everything that you need while you are there. So a lot of people are saying that cost should be shifted to the individuals, traveling to Gambia. If your travel to the country is not essential, then you should bear the cost of paying your own quarantine and not the government. That burden shouldn't be on the government. Can you just tell us, what your opinion is in terms of that?
Okay. Anyway, first of all, I think when the government said, for example, what is needed was for the government to understand is that when they put state of emergency in place with restriction, normally I believe what was to be done is to make sure that land, air, and sea border are closed, 100% closed, so that there would be no going in and out, unless certain exceptions can be led to be done. Okay. What concerns about this 14 million and all the expenditure list that you just sorted out here? How to call it? Those are what we call misplaced priorities. They are quite evidently clear that these are misplaced priorities. It's not something that are really a serious government would do. When they are really serious about controlling COVID-19, this wasn't the real plan to put in place. Instead, they should have put at least a Marshall Plan that will work, that will help the nation in its entirety to be secured, our borders from land, air, and sea. Okay, declaring a state of emergency and putting measures that goes with it should have been respected. Should have been number one priority to make sure that what is the essence of having a government, formulating a government, or voting in a government, or putting in a mechanism that will oversee and oversight a country's internal affairs and external affairs. So the government really, I believe that they could have done best. They could have done in a very different way, whereby this is a virus that it has no feet. It doesn't walk alone. It doesn't go by itself. Someone must carry it. And there are people who are asymptomatic to this virus, in fact, even with test or whatever. So I believe that, first of all, they should not even allow people to come in the country or go out, or it might be for certain reasons. There can be exceptions for people to go out, but to let people come in, this was the major problem since in the beginning. In fact, when you look at the whole scenario of this failure of the first state of emergency that was put in place. First of all, the first state of emergency that was put, instead, what we are doing now was what was to be done before. Like Senegal did, in fact, they are now retrograding back, doing what Senegal did.
So, Mr. I'm sorry to cut you there, but a total closure of our borders, I don't think, in my own opinion, is the solution, because a small, tiny country like ours, we are heavily dependent on exports, like Serif alluded to, on imports for our food. If we are on lockdown for 2 weeks, there will be hunger, in Gambia. So the lockdown, and there's a necessity also for certain cargoes, commercial cargoes, to come to the country, even for certain people to come into the country.
Yeah.
Okay, so a total lockdown, I think, it has to be categorized as essential versus non-essential. Okay, but to me, what I was trying to talk about is people coming into the country for vacations. For example, those that were going to the Gambia for Tabaski, but they planned it out maybe 2 weeks and a half in advance, knowing that once they get there, they'll be quarantined, and a few days before Tabaski, if they happen to be negative, they'll be released and they'll be with their family members. And the burden of the cost, was on the government in its entirety. So, do you think the government should change its strategy going forward in making sure that people that decide to go to Gambia, if they're deemed non-essential, they should be responsible for their own quarantine costs? That's what I was trying to get to. And just give it a few minutes there, and then I'll shift to Sheriff.
Yeah, I will come there, but what I want to emphasize on, because I think I will use this opportunity to express that. The thing is, actually, you see what we are suffering. Actually, we are suffering from internal, internal lockdown. Actually, internal lockdown. So this was what was to be done. Means there should be what we call external lockdown. Lock down the borders, the frontiers that surround you. Like Niko Yeko, Wulunyama to lebe silokan. Wulunyama to be silokan. Tayela korda bunda sorong. Nimela korda bunda sorong. Abe dunna nela korda konole. Nimela korda nimela bungo bundal sorong. Abe dunnela bungo konole. Wulunyama to lebe sate kono. So this is what we need to understand. This is the point. No, now they are imposing internal lockdown on us while they could do external lockdown. Lock down the borders, the frontiers. Okay, let me tell you, there is a possibility of internal movement. How to call it? Businesses will go. Okay, you see what is causing this whole trouble actually is now the internal lockdown is causing this all economic havoc. Okay, why? Because if our borders were closed internally, goods and services movement would our vegetable sellers, these vegetable garden sellers, and all these petty traders would those that feed from hand to mouth will be able to work daily internally. Even tourism, there are people who came for tourism and they were in the Gambia. They would have preferred, hence Gambia has locked down its borders, air, land, and sea, and no one is coming in. There is no case that has been detected. Some would have preferred to say, okay, I will stay in the Gambia for a period of time. I'll extend my holiday in the hotel I am. This is the essence. It should have been, they should have locked down. There will be internal economic movement.
Can I jump in there?
And now, Sheriff wanted to piggyback on what you were saying, that the Sheriff, go ahead.
Exactly.
Okay. Bunda soro bari ni sokol bela sansana de nya sokol siara fala ma protection soro de. Ila sansa. Ni la sansa sokol siara. Eba protection soro de. Kaniel isira bunda soro nya nyandi ni la sansa la sokol soro.
Okay.
Yeah. Gambia and Senegal la problem ot.
Yeah, no, the thing is
also are in three.
Yeah.
Right.
No, the thing is that was the point. That was the point. They should have control.
It's hard.
No, it could be done. It could be done. Not only the immigration or the police, the military. What is the sense of our military to surround our? There are strategic places and various places, loopholes, whereby the military could be positioned all over to make sure that Gambia is safe within the parameters of our borders. That it could be done. It's doable.
Yes, I understand it.
All right.
Okay, so the main border post. This is very important.
Sorry, I'm not getting you that much. I don't know whether your microphone is getting. I don't know.
Oh, you come with us.
Okay, go on.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, Indiana. Yes, go ahead.
So it will move for near military or spread along the country. That also comes at a cost because if we see dining, in a daily upkeep, for some additional expense, to the government, and over time it will add up. It will not make any difference, from whatever they've allotted, for hotel accommodations.
Okay. Just a minute. No, just a minute.
Allow him to finish, and then you can come back.
Maybe it's the network. The time. Sometimes I think maybe
might be a little latency, yes, but allow him to complete. Then you can.
Gambia, more the do na Senegal go na Gambia every day. It's not come amasia come nunto akete no nyami. But for multi Gambia not falanjai. Gambia no muli alanka fa nyim mol bota Senegal na adna Gambia yesu de ke report le. You understand? Ike report le. I don't. Ips be mo focus a good point. Ni manke tamalal dronte from abroad. Ndamala mobile America or labo Europe. It Gambia 14 days pre lockdown. Number one, in the US, you don't have that kind of luxury to have more than 2 weeks, vacation. Why would you go and do that, in the Gambia under lockdown? I think, it's
Marlon, I'm not hearing. Okay.
Sheriff, Morris is kind of here, but let's shift gears a little bit. We almost have about 10 minutes to go, guys. So I wanted to talk about the recovery strategy. Okay. So now we've seen the curfew being imposed, and that's done, with the view of trying to curb the transmission rate. Okay, we understand that, and hopefully, with the curfew being enforced, the transmission rate may go down, and also Gambians now knowing that there are people that the loved ones that are connected to them being COVID-19 positive. Sometimes you have to see something to believe it, right? So a lot of people's ideas I think I'm convinced that people are now embracing the idea that this is real and it's in the country, with a lot of sensitization coming from other networks like the Fatu Network, Kerfatu, and other networks out there. So I believe that there might be a shift in people's ideas in Gambia going forward, okay? And they might start to practice more social distancing approaches, washing their hands all over again, like the excitement that happened when this thing started, like back in May. So now, with all these strategies being implemented by the government and our people trying to adhere to these new enforcement practices. So now, what do you think should be a recovery strategy for us to recover from this pandemic? And once we recover from this pandemic, what measures need to be taken in place and also instituted so that going forward, when this happens later, maybe another form of national disaster, not only a disease, but it could be a natural form of disaster, flooding or whatever it could be. What can the government do to us to make sure that they are well equipped and prepared? So, Sheriff, if you can come into this, and then Maury can piggyback on whatever your answers are.
Well, how long this would take? I cannot make a prediction.
You cannot?
I can't make. Yeah, of course not. That would be a bold prediction to make. But what we can make, comments on, is what we do, what in response, to tailing, the search in cases, in the Gambia. And the best way to do that is, is with people who practice, guys are chime, okay. And following, the WHO guidelines, to prevent contracting or transmitting, the COVID-19, disease, to close members or, the wider, society as a whole. So social distancing measures and other, protection guidelines, need to be followed. That will be the road, to recovery. in the future, well, there are lots of opportunities. You know, the good thing about a crisis is, it shows you who you are. It shows you who you are as a country, and it shows, the capacity of your government, its preparedness in responding, to natural disasters. And in the case of the Gambia, we have ample opportunity, to go back to the drawing board, like Mr. Cisse said, and look at what's been done in the country, what has worked, what has not worked, and look at what other countries have done to learn best practices that we can adopt, in our natural disaster preparedness, our risk management, and our response and recovery measures, and our resilience, plan as a country. One thing I've seen that the government needs to pay attention to, actually not even one thing, but some of the areas we have to pay attention to is, within our response strategy in the future, we have to decentralize. We have to decentralize certain things. I think, at the local level, we have to enhance the capacity of, the various regions, various communities, when it comes to responding to natural disasters or certain diseases or pandemics, that might, happen in the future. We live in a globalized economy. People travel back and forth. It was a white man's disease. So that also led to the reason why people never took it, very seriously in the first place. But with people traveling across the world and spreading disease vectors, any society is vulnerable, as we have seen. And, we have to decentralize our response, to natural disasters, enhance the capacity of the local people to report and to be able to, manage, disasters at the very local level and not, totally, depend on the federal government, on the national government, to take charge. So that's one area. And the other thing too is, as a country, we have to pay attention, to key areas, in our development sector, the education sector, the health sector, the agricultural sector. If you look at it right now, education is severely impacted. The kids are not going to school. They had, certain plans, in place, to give, the students, some lessons, via TV and I think, radio. However effective that is, I don't know. I'm not in the Gambia. I've not seen the measurements, to know whether it is, effective or not. But there are opportunities for us to look, to explore what kind of technologies, can we bring, in the Gambia, whether it is going to be a local bred technology that Gambians, would develop based on the local realities, the needs of the local people, to be prepared. For such things, or not even for in the case of natural disaster, but to use technology, to make a difference within the education sector or the health sector. How do we have a robust, database management system where we will catalog, health crisis, or whatever, might be necessary, to make sure our health system and tracking, of our diseases, are very much, improved. And agriculture, how do we enhance the capacity of the local farmers, to bring food self-sufficiency in the Gambia, to reduce our import, burden, because whatever rice comes to the Gambia, that or subsidy that the government has to pay, and that eats, into our foreign, reserves. We have to work on that, and the best way to do that, is to boost agriculture, to help young entrepreneurs, who are within agriculture, to have, the right resources, whether it is going to be finances, whether it's going to be the mentorship, or what, or the incentives, might be available, for them, to help, make sure the Gambia is, food sufficient. So there are various sectors, but more so health. More so health. Our health system is not good. And that impacts us not only as a country, but it also impacts our ability to attract foreign development investment. We can't have foreign development investment without a good health sector, because nobody from the West or other parts of the world would send their experts or bring people to invest in the country when there is not an effective health system. Because if you fall sick, you might die. So this is
So you're cutting out.
Very, very tough. So if you look at the investment with within that budget that the Ministry of Finance, put up, there was a very paltry amount, that was, reserved, for, medical equipment. When, COVID-19 hits, it's a respiratory illness. You need to have ventilators. Yeah. You need to have the right equipment, to attend sick people. But it seems, the Gambia was more concerned about, bandaging the situation, putting people, into the hotels. If the people get sick, then how do you respond when you don't have the equipment?
Yeah. So that's true.
Be very conscious about this, three level. For the development of every country, there are three. It's like a three-legged stool. Gambia on the COVID, you can't see around with the sabo. So, you have to have health, you have to have education, and you have to have agriculture, and they go in tandem. When one suffers, the other suffers as well. So this has to be key areas that we have to focus on. And most importantly, we have to be very strict when it comes to corruption in the country. What has happened, what I've heard, what I've seen, and from the very Minister of Health, Mr. Samate, the press conference he gave the last time about what people were doing, putting ghost names in payrolls, that was a shame. This is not the time for that. Investment needs to be directed to the people that need it. Why would you put the name of phantom employees when there's a national crisis? That is a very big shame, and we can address that. We are in 2020. Gambia should have a good human resource information system. There is no need for the employees' records to be held excellent. There are Gambian experts overseas who are software engineers, who I'm sure with the right incentives, will be willing to help, with the government to make sure that they have the right tools in place to make sure that kind of corruption and slippages are eradicated. But it has to start from the government. It has to start from the leadership. They have to be ready and willing to stamp out corruption in the country, and then they have to be able and willing to adopt the right measures to do that. And the diaspora and the Gambian experts on the ground need to come together, to help. To take out, some of these development challenges, we have. But the buck starts, with the government, itself. We have a long recovery ahead. As a country, we can do what we can, but, we also revolve within the international system. And what happens outside affects us as a country as a whole. But the challenge starts, from.
Yeah. Sounds good. And thank you, Sherry, for that in-depth analysis on the recovery approach. So, Mr. Cisse, we are about to go. We have about 3 more minutes to go. Can you tell us, the lessons learned, from this pandemic? What do you think are the lessons that, could be drawn, from this COVID-19 pandemic in Gambia?
All right. So, anyway, first of all, I think we can realize, in fact, some of the weaknesses, in fact, in our system in its entirety, in its global entirety, the weaknesses, in our institutions, in the Gambia. So, which shows, the incapacitated leadership out there, first of all, and also the weak institutions that are in place, whereby the unpreparedness of our health system, because whereby in a country with such pandemic and with an invisible enemy, and the state cannot realize that there is an enemy which needs a battalion and many battalions of army to fight against it. Our battalion of army at this period of time is not the Gambia Armed Forces, it's the doctors and nurses in our hospitals, in our healthcare system. So those are the army to fight against this invisible enemy, which we need to get ready, prepared, give them the necessary amenities to fight against such a disease. We can learn also that like I said, the unpreparedness, in fact, how to call it? What I want to say, on the other hand, is even the minister has become a whistleblower at the National Assembly, denouncing the corrupt mechanism system that has been put in place. When it comes to, how to call it, when funds were ready to be disbursed to various sectors, I don't know, there was like a ghost list he denounced that, which shows the level of corruption. I can say he's a real whistleblower in that. So how to call it, the big failures and the lessons to learn. We can now realize that Gambia need to really think about how to maybe try to build a health facility that will be an ultra modern health facility that is so modern. These colonial vestiges hospitals should be something of the past in the first place. Look at it. It shows also, it reveals the weaknesses in our health system, whereby we are in the early initial stage of this virus, we were incapacitated to conduct tests. We had to go to MRC, which is a colonial vestige in our country for decades. And now we have to rely, and now, rejecting the neo-colonialism conspirations, and now we accepting to be using those mechanisms again. Those are there for research. They are conducting research and other things. Why can't we have an institution of the same equivalence, as the MRC, conducting tests like such, and how to call it, also, curing some curable diseases that people might pay huge. In fact, before coming to this COVID, I think what is being revealed here is our citizens every year, the number of Gambians that goes to Dakar in Senegal to have medical attention, who seeks medical attention in Senegal. They are in numbers, and they spend I can say a huge sum, exorbitant sums to make sure that they have medical attention in Dakar, whatever. That is the first signal of weakness in our own medical system. We need to alarm each and every Gambian that we are having a dilapidated health system which need to be addressed. Man, I will tell you, in this 21st century, first of all, what the government needs to put in place is to make sure that it's being stabilized by hook or by hook, to make sure that energy system, our energy, is the first priority of the Gambia today. Today, the first priority, not even our health system, but our energy sector is the first primary sector that needs to be considered by our government. Because in this 21st century, Gambia of today and the world of today, the global world of today, if we are able to communicate thousands of kilometers away from each other, is because of energy. So I believe that Gambia should have a primary focus, step-by-step focus. But this reveals a lot. This reveals it reveals also the level of corruption, and corruption is all around in the world. But the thing is, there are draconian laws that accompany that goes with it. But the thing is, having laws and not implementing them, not implementing laws, that's the biggest problem of our country. In the National Assembly, they will say things at the National Assembly, and enforcing those laws. Man, the first state of emergency that was declared, okay, that goes with measures and all kind of things. We've all seen the rallies and some political meetings that has taken place, all around, and we know who were those people doing those political rallies. Even a mini political rally, I can say. Why that? Why not respect the formalities instead of in a state of emergency, and there is an invisible enemy, and you're just going about and conducting a political rally. I think these are some of the things it reveals, that our unseriousness and unpreparedness to make sure that we attack this, we confront this invisible enemy with a ferocious seriousness to make sure that we contain. But I can assure you, Gambia, to be candid, will heal together with the world. Gambia will not heal alone if our situation and our conditions remain such, whereby implementation of law wouldn't be that much respected. how to call it, we will heal along with the world. And also how to call it, the other weaknesses of of ourselves. Look at the number of NGOs in our country. That shows you the number of NGOs in the Gambia is a clear indication of the level of how to call it, corruption going on in the Gambia. Why necessary NGOs? You can count NGOs, you know, with your fingers. You can finish counting.
Yes, I cannot agree more with you. I'm sorry, but you hitting some points that, you know, are very important, like the need for a vibrant economy, vibrant energy sector. You know, I like that, and also talking about the non-governmental organization, you know, how they are spiraling in the country. I think that should be a topic for another day. I just hold it right there, and we should come back to that. And Sheriff, you touched on a point, you know, that has to deal with our education sector earlier. You talked about how the grade 12 students and the grade 9 students are being allowed to go back, you know, to school in order to be able to take their grade, the WAS exams. But also, when you look at it, I'm not trying to constrict us to the greater Banjul area, but when you go to the other parts of the country where electricity is even a problem, I think it is to provide some sort of remote learning opportunities to these students. You know, like you said, maybe it has to be something developed by our own people in the Gambia, you know, to find a way to make sure that during this lockdown period, you know, our kids are still learning. So to me, that is very dear to me, because I think education is important. These kids cannot afford to be staying home and not doing anything, you know, not having the opportunity. Sometimes I see it on GRTS, you know, doing remote learning sessions, but, you know, there are communities where even televisions are problems. And those kids, you know, in those remote areas, you know, deserve an equal opportunity in terms of access to education as well. So I think that's a very important point that you alluded to. You also mentioned something about the ghost employees, you know, the phantom employees that were created, you know, which was actually a conduit, you know, to some sort of corruption practices as well. So, but Sheriff, you know, I just want us to all give our last words. What last words do you have, you know, before we close this program for today?
Well, thank you, Ibrahim, and thank you, Mr. Cisse. Mr. Cisse, you know, I'm always impressed, you know, when I talk to Gambians like you and countless others like you with very innovative ideas and the passion, you know, to see our country develop. And equally, we all tend to have our impatience at times for good reasons, based on things, you know, that happened in the Gambia. You know, but I think, you know, with everything, given time and collective efforts, you know, we can make a difference one way or another. Going back, you know, to what we talked about the COVID-19, I think, you know, the most important thing right now is, you know, to take the disease very seriously. That it's a very deadly disease, as evidence has shown, not only in the Gambia, but around the world, that it can kill, and it doesn't discriminate by class, it doesn't discriminate by gender, religion, or race. And as a society, you know, the Gambia, we have a very, very close-knit society. What impacts one impacts, you know, everyone. And we should not endanger ourselves and endanger, you know, the lives of other people within, you know, the Gambian society.
Sure.
And the best way to protect ourselves and, you know, to protect our people, you know, is to practice, you know, the social distance guidelines and to listen to the health experts, you know, that are on the ground, and to take the disease seriously, stay at home, and exercise, you know, the necessary protective measures, you know, that are stipulated by washing our hands, you know, wearing face masks, and practicing social distance, you know, to protect ourselves, protect our loved ones, and be supportive of each other, whether you are within the Gambia or outside.
All right, sounds good.
And to put politics aside, most important. It's not the time for politics. And we've seen some of that within, the National Assembly. And we've seen that, within the government. And we've seen the reaction of Gambians, online who are frustrated. And they tend to take this thing, within a political angle. And you did mention something, with regards, to, I think, some political leaders coming out, appealing to their followers to exercise the social distance, guidelines that are stipulated, and they got a backlash. Well, we exist in a, but this is not the period for politics. We'll have the opportunity to go back to political campaigns, like what the political leaders said, when the time arises, and I think that is a very selfless act on some of them, because if not, they would have been promoting their own personal agenda, to let their supporters go out and appeal to the people or condemn government for its response. But they didn't do that. What they're asking people to do is to support the efforts of the government by respecting, the lockdown and then the emergency powers that are instituted by the government. And I think every Gambian, whether within or outside the Gambia, should complement that effort, to make sure that Gambians, stay at home and they exercise, the right guidelines, that will protect, the society as a whole. And I think, that's, the first step. And hopefully that will make, a difference. And then at some point, we can get back to politics or discussing measures, about what's been done right, what's been done wrong. Now the focus should be how to protect the society and to weather this storm. So in closing, I want to thank you again. I want to thank the viewers and Mr. CCA. I want to commend you and thank you. And I look forward to more discussions, with you. And everybody stay safe and stay well.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. I appreciate that. Mr. CCA, what last words do you have?
All right. First of all, I return my thanks to Mr. Sharif. And you, Mr. Sengo, I'm saying my great thanks to you and the viewers too. How to call it? In a democratic nation, or in democracy, we might have different opinions about issues concerning about national development or whatever. I think what I would last say is we have a long way to go, a very long way, whereby I think we need to continue to have such a constructive dialogue as citizens and concerned citizens, and also maintain a decorum of a decorum in it, whereby we will make sure we deal with issues accordingly, especially in these trying times. These issues should be, these pandemic issues should be completely apolitical, and also make sure that we elaborate on issues given how to call it, the exact magnitude of its degree, that of thorough how to call it, we try to hold our leaders accountable much more. All right, so what I will say, I'm looking forward to have a further discussion with you all again on other issues, but the Gambia really needs actually a serious leadership, a proactive leadership, how to call it. We must realize that the essence of government as an institution, that is the reason why I'll just quickly elaborate on this issue that I saw they wrote about Lawyer Dabo, UDP, how to call it, things he wrote about to his party militant, addressing his party militants. His party militants are Gambians. So like we say in Mandinka, Albalabe Sate Kono, iko mobe diamu ila kore. Yeah. Mobe diamu ila kore, that become an issue. So we must understand that the guy is just maybe having a shadow government. So there is a government in place. He should not be speaking on behalf of the president of the republic. We have a president with constitutional powers and mandates are vested on. So a political party leader cannot replace that person to be addressing the nation. He can address the nation informally, but not formally. And when issues like this arise, all political parties, political leaders are expected to be mandated to come out and address your people. Means yellow cordial address. They will listen to you much more. Maybe APRC folks won't listen to Dabo. Would UDP folks listen to Jame? Actually, if Jame says state of is don't do politics, actually in the Gambia, no, they won't. So I think the most prudent way to do is to make sure that address political leaders to come out and address their masses, so that those masses, when they are accumulated together, makes the Gambian population. GDC address the GDC supporters, UDP address the UDP supporters, Barrow address his supporters and others, and then Barrow can come out and address the entire nation. No political leader has the right to replace a sitting president to give a speech to the nation formally. It can be done informally, but not formally. We have a president. So what I will conclude here is we need to understand the devastating effect of this COVID-19 on our economy and thereafter. But don't worry. The thing is, the country is a donor dependent. 30% of our GDP is being completed by EU, and another 30% by the how to call it the diaspora remittances. So you will come to realize that, in fact, Gambia, the case of Gambia has to heal along with the whole entire world together. We don't have the means and the capacity to heal ourselves out of this as an exception to extricate ourselves and heal our problem, our economic situation just right away on our own. That's impossible. They cannot do it because we are donor dependent. Monle kanso. Mel kanso ni wal fon a problem o soto ni wal man kende antolta kende yala. So this is the issue with our country. You need to rationalize to understand. We need to maintain this system. If I maintain that, they have no solution. That is the reality. They have no solution. A beggar has no solution. When you are sick, you have to wait for the one that gives you medicine to bring you medicine. So in the sick, actually, the donors will come in. But the thing is, the squandering that is going on, Yalom, the issue, there is a big mistake that has happened. Yakodo dilale. So why power was given to Ministry of Health to now go with the issues, thinking that and it resurged with a very in a violent manner, that unexpected, and now the situation is just like this. EU has donated to World Bank and others, money flown in. The money was spent in prioritized domains which were not necessary at all. The list that you just put out right now here. What is in that list? If you read the whole entirety of that list, $14 million for for hotels and other things. So coming back to conclusion, just in conclusion, I think we will have another time to elaborate more on those issues, and we can see nice ideas. This is very important. It's a national issue. I think we should listen to each other and make sure that give the best advices to our nation. Hence, it is apolitical. But what I would want to emphasize is, let us all come together to make sure that we talk to our government, to realize that this is a very good barometer to measure our weaknesses and what is not working in our institutions, that like the health system, our energy sector. The fundamental basic thing today for a country immediately, the situation of Gambia is energy. The prime import, even not before the health, but energy is, you cannot put someone in a block operation room without energy. It's impossible. We have machines to work on. So we need to first of all fix our energy system, and investors will come. And because how can you plant your factory and know that electricity is not here, 400 volt is not here to run my energy, my machine for 24 hours? It's impossible. Our health system, you go to Banjul, no electricity. So the energy is I think is the vital pivotal point for our country to realize that we need to fix our energy sector by all means. Even it will take five-year term, a 5 years mandate to make sure that energy is fixed. I think our government need to make sure that let them do that. Either a civil central nuclear power be a project or whatever. But this ketung man ke saya borot. Can you masindingol na fe na nyim masindingol nyin 12 megawatt 12 meg. Look at Rwanda. They did it. They signed a contract with Russia for a civil central nuclear power. Energy is the most important thing. Banko be kumaya energy in na banko kang. Energy is the number one priority. Alnyana men fix la. Energy lokat job employment binale. But energy is not working. Nifutata hospital, health system is just crumbling. So I think we need to come back to the drawing board, and also our elites, But one thing I will also emphasize is, I think these people, when you look at this list, it's just to appropriate themselves, appropriate their positions and works. But these people, it's a government, people make government for the people and by the people. But this is government of the people and for the elites. So in conclusion, I would just say maybe in the next episode, I would just want to come on probably to have some in-depth dialogue with you, how to call it, analysis also. And there are more issues. Probably this one is just might be a prompt to me because I was out coming in haste, I was swearing to get to you guys. But seriously, I think our nation needs to be properly, we need to calibrate certain things to make sure that we talk to our elites in a very serious manner so that they can hear, to know that these people are not enemies. These people are people, who probably have other ideas that they can inject in, and probably we can consume also, and also try to how to call it, they can screen it and try to see the good side or good things that we try to relate to them. But they know, most of them know. They've been in the developed world, educated in the developed world. Because of what? Corruption, self-appropriation. They're appropriating themselves. So we need to understand that we need to, there is a whole lot of work to do. And yes, I think I can run here until in the morning and it won't end. Yeah, so thanks to you, thanks to Sirif and Sirif Mbekondonabake for your wonderful analysis too. And Ibrahim was saying thanks to you too.
Thank you guys.
Thanks to the viewers.
Your opinions are valid, and I cannot agree more with you on most of the issues that you talked about. And I think, this COVID-19 is a bad omen for our country, and we are going to get out of this, with our heads high. We are going to recover, but we cannot stop having these conversations. We need to have a continued approach to this, keep talking about it, because what we've seen essentially is that this pandemic exposed some of our weaknesses in many areas, and we need to reprioritize our efforts as a government, as a country, as a people, in how we move forward as a country. So not to say a lot of the segments of our economy are going to be impacted. You know, you guys talked about health, you guys talked about the economy in broad, you talked about energy, the education system. So this pandemic affects everything, and we are being exposed, and it's up to us to recalibrate ourselves, like he said, and try to find ways to move forward and also reduce the dependency factor. Being completely dependent on other countries. So if those countries are at a standstill, we are at a standstill. So like Maurice said, you can sell it. So the world so those are things that we can learn from as a country. And again, we will try to cut it here, and we are live on Beggar TV. We will be on this platform every Saturday at 5 p.m. GMT, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time, and in France it will be at 7 p.m. So thanks to the viewers for watching us. My fellow panelists here, my co-host Sheriff Cora. Thank you for the in-depth analysis, and thanks to our guest, Maurice Cisse, for being on board. Please do not forget to go on like our page. Is facebook.com/BeggarTV. You can also go on YouTube and subscribe to our channel, and also hit that notification bell so that whenever we upload a video, you'll be one of the first to see it. Please support us as we are starting this, our first episode. We'll be coming back every Saturday, same time, to make sure that, we share ideas. If you're also interested in being a guest on this show, please reach out to me. My phone number is 214-364-3439, or you can reach out to Sheriff, and we'll be glad to have you on this platform. Anyway, so thank you guys again, for being, with me for the past hour and a half. I'm very excited and delighted to have you guys, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much.